Alright guys, today we're going to be going over Keenan Cornelius, Garry Tonon, and Craig Jones, and in that order, so stick around. Keenan Cornelius BJJ Talk. Hi guys, welcome back to TB, and today we're going to be talking about Keenan Cornelius. We're going to go over Keenan Cornelius, his background, influences, style, and accomplishments. Keenan Cornelius is a black belt under Galvao. Right now he's currently not associated with any team. He is famous for his creative use of various guards, and most notably for his worm guard innovations. Keenan is considered one of the great creative innovators of Jiu-Jitsu. Let's go over some of his accomplishments now. First place 5 grappling in 2013, first place IBJJF Pro League in 2014, first place IBJJF American Nationals in 2017, first place IBJJF Japanese Nationals in 2017, first place IBJJF Asian Open in 2017, first place IBJJF Chicago Open in 2017, first place IBJJF Boston Open in 2017, first place IBJJF Seattle Open in 2017, second place ADCC World Championships in 2017, third place IBJJF World Championships in 2018, and third place IBJJF Penn Championships in 2018. Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff. Now that we have a little more light, let's go into a little bit of Keenan's background. So Keenan Cornelius was born in Hawaii, and that was in 1992. So Keenan started doing jiu-jitsu under his father, Tom Kalos, and it was doing mostly no-gi at the time. Tom Kalos is actually the guy who introduced BJ Penn to jiu-jitsu. And Keenan said that when he started jiu-jitsu, he mostly wanted to do it to learn MMA. So jiu-jitsu wasn't really his final goal. It's interesting that most of his innovations were in the gi when primarily he wanted to just do MMA. And in fact, he mentioned later that Marcelo Garcia is the reason why he started training in the gi, because Marcelo had said that training in the gi helps for no gi. So later on, Keenan went to college in Hilo, and he was able to train at BJ Penn's gym. And he did this for about 2 to 3 years. Aside from doing jiu-jitsu, he also did boxing and MMA. He eventually received his purple belt from BJ Penn. Keenan then messaged Loyd Irvin, and he asked him if he can go train with him in Maryland. And Loyd Irvin said go ahead, but he had to travel over there on his own. So eventually Keenan did go over there. At Team Loyd Irvin, Keenan was able to stay for free because Loyd was providing housing for him, and he also trained not only jiu-jitsu but MMA. So Keenan won many tournaments as a purple belt and a brown belt during his time with Team Loyd Irvin. Due to a lot of negative allegations that went on at Team Loyd Irvin's jiu-jitsu school, Keenan eventually ended up leaving for Atos, and that's where he started training with Galvao. And of course, I already mentioned earlier that Keenan eventually ended up getting his black belt under Galvao. So Keenan made many discoveries in jiu-jitsu, especially innovations with the lapel guard, but one of his most famous guards is the worm guard. Keenan said that he actually designed the worm guard to defend against JT Torres from passing his guard all the time, because JT would not allow him to get a single grip, and that the only grip that he can get sometimes was just the end of the lapel, and he would hold on to that. It was around 2011 and 2012 when Keenan was a purple belt that he started developing a lapel guard. He actually used to call the worm guard the marionette guard, and it wasn't later until Galvao actually named it the worm guard. I thought that was interesting, I didn't know that. Keenan does have his own website, which I would love to make a review about, and maybe I will one day. And aside from his website, he also has a lapel encyclopedia, which is super cool. I think it's selling for over $200 right now, but man, I would love to see that. It's just a little pricey, but maybe one day if I can make enough money off of YouTube, I can go and try out his lapel encyclopedia. Or Keenan, if you're out there listening and you want to give me access so I can make a quick review, that would be awesome. Just throwing that out there. So Gordon Ryan and his coach John Danaher both speak very highly of Keenan Cornelius. Gordon Ryan actually said in an interview that he would put Keenan Cornelius as one of the 4 people on Mount Rushmore, if there was a Mount Rushmore of Jiu-Jitsu. Garry Tonon breakdown. Garry Tonon received his black belt from Tom DeBlas and Ricardo Almeida. He is sometimes called the Lion Killer. He fights somewhere between 155 pounds to 165 pounds, and that's about 75 kilograms. He is best known for his no-gi skills, and I actually first found out about him when Eddie Bravo mentioned him in a podcast with Joe Rogan. He talked about a match between Garry Tonon and Kron Gracie at ADCC. There's even a Stuart Cooper film about it. Garry Tonon was in a really tight armbar, like super tight, and he eventually ended up getting out of it. I suppose Eddie Bravo noticed that, and it kind of made Garry Tonon more on the radar because he was up against Kron Gracie and they had such a close match. As the story goes, Eddie Bravo eventually invited Garry Tonon to come out and fight on one of his Eddie Bravo Invitationals. At the time, the EBI was still pretty new, so everybody was pretty excited about seeing the Eddie Bravo Invitationals, and Garry Tonon had that opportunity to go out there and fight really well under that rule set where he's able to use his heel hooks and sacrifice positions for submissions whenever he needed to. This is where Garry Tonon truly displayed dominance. Garry Tonon actually happens to be one of my favorite grapplers. Some of his accomplishments are first place EBI welterweight 2014, first place EBI lightweight 2015, first place EBI light heavyweight in 2016, first place IBJJF Penn no-gi championship in 2015, Polaris 5 Super Fight winner, and Fight to Win Pro 28 Super Fight winner as well. Garry Tonon says that he competes to test himself so that he can be a better instructor. So let's go into a little bit of his background. So Garry Tonon was born in 1991 in New Jersey. He started jiu-jitsu like a lot of other people at the age of 14. Seems to be a good age, I guess. And about a half year later, he started training under Tom DeBlas. As we mentioned earlier, Tom DeBlas is the one who eventually promoted Garry Tonon to black belt. He later started training with Eddie Cummings and John Danaher. And this is when the Danaher Death Squad began formation. Garry Tonon went on to win many no-gi competitions as a black belt. Garry Tonon also branded a company that's called Cash, Chicks, and Championships. Yeah, it's kind of a funny branding, and I saw John Calistine kind of sporting it after he won one of the EBI competitions. So aside from just competing, Garry Tonon also likes to teach. Right now, he's a coach at the Brunswick BJJ Academy. If you haven't heard, Garry Tonon has transitioned into MMA now, so he's fighting in the 1FC. He defeated Richard Cormier by TKO in the second round. In fact, out of his 5 matches, he won 2 by TKO. And the other 3 matches, he won by submission. Guillotine, heel hook, and with a rear naked choke. Garry said that the closest jiu-jitsu match that he had to MMA was when he fought Rusumar Palhares. Because Palhares would try to poke your eyes out, he'll slap you, and he'll even slam you. And perhaps worst of all, if he does manage to catch you in a submission, he usually just holds on to it even after you tapped. So he's a scary guy to go against, basically. Despite all this, Garry said that he gets much more nervous about competing in MMA. Yeah, he says that in jiu-jitsu you have a little bit more time to stop once in a while and think about what you're doing, or you have the option of just going into autopilot, but in MMA it's just super fast and it's much more reactive. That's according to him. Some of the MMA competitors that Garry Tonon looks up to are George St. Pierre, Damian Maia, and Khabib. Garry Tonon says that he would love to fight Kron Gracie, but it will be a difficult match to set up, especially now that Kron is in the UFC. A more realistic endeavor might be setting up a grappling match between the two, which I know would still be a very popular thing to watch. Garry Tonon does also like to teach, and one of his students and best friends is Gordon Ryan. Welcome to the Craig Jones BJJ Talk. Today on TB we're going to be talking about Craig Jones. Stick around because we're going to talk about Craig Jones' accomplishments, his influences, and jiu-jitsu style. And a little bit about his instructor as well. Craig Jones is a black belt under Lachlan Lyles. Lachlan's nickname is Lucky. Lucky competed in the EBI before Craig Jones did. Lucky also has a YouTube channel that I happen to enjoy, by the way. Craig Jones actually competed against Lucky one time in a competition where Craig Jones won by an arm triangle choke. Craig Jones is part of Absolute MMA, and he usually competes at about 200 pounds. That's about 90 kilograms. So let's talk about some of his accomplishments. He got 3rd place at Kasai 5 Grand Prix in 2019, 1st place in ADCC Asian and Oceania Trials, Polaris 205-pound champion in 2018, Polaris 185-pound champion in 2019, 3rd place EBI 11 Invitational in 2017, and he got 2nd place in EBI 14 in 2017. And the only person he lost to on that one was Gordon Ryan. He actually performed very well. And now let's talk a little bit about his background. So Craig was born in 1991 in Adelaide, Australia. As a young man, Craig learned a little bit of judo and taekwondo before he started learning jiu-jitsu. And it was at the age of 15 that he finally found jiu-jitsu, and the main reason was because he wanted to compete in the UFC eventually and become UFC champion. And when he did start jiu-jitsu, he was thrown in there with the adults, and he feels that it helped him to develop a very good guard game. And he also feels that it helped him to be able to learn to protect himself while he's on bottom, because he was always dealing with much larger and stronger opponents from the get-go. He said that he didn't really start working on leg locks until he was preparing for an ADCC competition. Some of the extra exercises that he does to prepare for jiu-jitsu is he does a little bit of swimming and weightlifting. And he says that the swimming he does mostly for cardio, and that the underwater swimming helps him to learn to kind of relax under stressful situations. I actually found that this helped me too, because when you swim underwater, it really forces you to be able to control yourself and not use any extra effort more than you need to, because you'll run out of oxygen really quick that way. That's just a side note. Anyway, Craig Jones said that up until his brown belt, he trained mostly in the gi, and he did no gi about once a week. And then when he got his brown belt, it was about 50-50, gi and no gi. It wasn't until he got his black belt that he trained mostly no gi, and it was to prepare for competitions. His favorite grappler is Braulio Estima. Another big match that he had was with Paul Harris, but he said that Paul Harris kind of stalled most of the time. He said that his favorite match was when he went against Keenan the second time, because he felt that he had improved quite a bit from the first time that he went against Keenan. He felt that he was mostly dominated on the first time. I first noticed Craig Jones when he competed in EBI 2. So in EBI 2 he went up against all these different competitors, and he was just finishing them with leg locks pretty quickly. And at the end he went against Craig Jones, and that was the main person who finally beat him. But that still demonstrated a huge amount of knowledge in jiu-jitsu. But it was in ADCC in 2017 that Craig Jones really gained a lot of notoriety when he submitted Leandro by rear naked choke. Nobody saw this coming, and that's when he really hit fame. So Craig Jones actually said that after that fight his life changed. And how exciting. He said that suddenly a lot of the sponsors that he had reached out to finally started sending him emails. That must have been a pretty exciting time for him. Craig is most known for his leg lock attacks. He does use a lot of conventional leg lock entries, but some of his leg lock entries seem to be unique to himself. He also is known for having a very strong Z guard, but I feel that his reverse X guard is what really catches a lot of people by surprise. That's because the reverse X guard is a lot less common. So if you'd like to see more videos like this where I talk about jiu-jitsu practitioners and a little bit of their history and their accomplishments, then go ahead and hit this link right here in the corner and you'll be on your way, okay? Thank you.